All right, so we have the populist right we talked about. We talked about Bernie Sanders and some of the squad. We just mentioned some of the hardcore neoconservatives. Now we have two politicians that have kind of showed their true side. In 2020, Professor Finkelstein, I supported Tulsi Gabbard because I thought foreign policy-wise, she was the best politician out there. In other words, I knew she wasn't perfect. She kept quiet a lot about her thoughts on Israel-Palestine. But when it came to, when she went to Syria and met with Assad and talked about possibly pulling out there, we were pushing her, the campaign, to recognize a little bit more what's going on in Latin America. But then she had this comment the other day, and she just said this here as well. I'm going to show you. Andrew, the United States must stand with Israel in the face of this terror attack by Islamist terrorist group Hamas. This is the latest example of the greater war being waged by both Sunni and Shia Islamist jihadists throughout the world. This should be a wake-up call to leaders everywhere that Islamist jihadists are the greatest short- and long-term threat to the safety, security, and the freedom of the American people and people throughout the world. I strongly disagree. I think the greatest threat is American foreign policy that drops bombs on a regular basis. Now, here's the other one. This is RFK. And this is really, really hard because I thought I was kind of analyzing the situation and saying there was still a tactical gain if we took RFK despite his position on Israel and Palestine. I don't know if you know this, Professor Finkelstein. It was me who went up to New Hampshire and asked him right after he had taken down some tweets from Roger Waters about his stance on Israel and Palestine. And what was so surprising to me is after he had pretty much stated that he was going to stand by Israel unequivocally, I had to say, and the Palestinians, so he would answer the rest of the question. It was upsetting, but I had looked at it as maybe, I don't know, a third rail where I can say there's so many other things we can gain from RFK that we have to take this loss. But this right here, this was so just disheartening. This ignominious, unprovoked, he said unprovoked, and barbaric attack on Israel must be met with world commendation and unequivocal support for the Jewish state's right to self-defense. We must provide Israel with whatever it needs to defend itself. Now, as president, and this is the part that really makes me upset, I'll make sure that our policy is unambiguous so that the enemies of Israel will think long and hard before attempting aggression of any kind. I applaud the strong statements of support from the Biden White House for Israel in our hour of need. However, the scale of these attacks means it is likely that Israel will need to wage a sustained military campaign to protect its citizens. Statements of support are fine, but we must now follow through with unwavering, resolute, and practical action. America must stand by or ally throughout this operation and beyond as it exercises its sovereign right to self-defense. The reason why this statement here is so disheartening and why I don't think I can ever support him is because, number one, it's pretty much giving the green light for carpet bombing, genocide, and starving these people out. Secondly, he's talking about unwavering support once he becomes president, that no matter what Israel does. So if this spins out of control and Lindsey Graham gets his way and we attack Iran, Russia gets involved to protect Iran, is RFK, if he was president, is he going to stand by Israel and provoke World War III? This was very, very hard to deal with. And the fact is that this statement here, no matter what, there's no solution here whatsoever. There's no suggestion of a solution. This here did it for me and a lot of other people too the other day. I was not even concerned or wanted to hear his announcement today that he was going independent because of this. And these two particular candidates, Professor Finkelstein, are looked upon as the most, the best foreign policy candidates that were ever out there. Tulsi in 2020 and RFK now. Your thoughts on these statements that have just come forth?
Well, I'd like to look at this question of the right to self-defense, Israel's right to self-defense. So, I would like to ask the question, to concentration camp guards. Does a state which contains a concentration camp, if the inmates attempt to break out, would it constitute some sort of violation, moral or legal, of law, such that the state has the right of self-defense against those confined in a concentration camp? Now, you might say, and you're perfectly legitimate in saying, but civilians were killed. And apparently, we still don't know the facts. We have to wait for the Human Rights Report investigations, apparently in large numbers. And I have to say, it doesn't please me, obviously. And I'm not happy about that fact. And I'm not going to give a but or a however. I'm simply going to state the facts. In our country's history, we have come to celebrate people like John Brown. In fact, during the Civil War, one of the songs that the Union troops sang in the Civil War was John Brown's body is a moldering in the grave. The God above in heaven is looking kindly down. John Brown's body is a moldering in the grave. John Brown, let's be clear. I don't know how much of the history you know. I've studied it somewhat, not as much as I would like. And if God allows me maybe 10 more years, I will read more on it. John Brown, I say this in respect. He was a complete fanatic. He was a religious fanatic. He was, brace yourself, he was a jihadi.
Yeah.
Oh, it's absolutely true.
Yeah, Frederick Douglass asked him not to do that because it was going to set things back.
He believed that God had sent him as a messenger to end slavery. He did. He was God's messenger. He had that fanatic's gleam in his eyes. When he went to fight in bloody Kansas, he took hostages in the course of the fighting. He killed them. He killed them. John Brown is celebrated. John Brown's bodies are moldering in the grave. Glory, hallelujah. There were many a slave rebellion, even in the United States, where a lot of civilians were killed. Now, I'm not saying I'm happy about it. I'm not saying I approve of it, but I will say, at the risk of incurring a lot of wrath, just as I won't approve it, I won't disapprove of it. End the blockade of Gaza, and then we'll see how things proceed. But until you end that blockade of that concentration camp, it would be an utter and total betrayal of my own family's martyrdom to deny the right of those inmates, those infant inmates of that concentration camp, to liberate themselves and to free themselves from that tyrannical that's been imposed on them.
Hey, come see us on tour. We're going to be in Dallas, Houston, San Diego, Bloomington, Illinois, Indianapolis, and Levittown, New York. Wow, that's a lot of dates. See you there.